All right, you're really excited. You've made the decision that you want to open your own practice or your own business. You've kind of made that choice mentally, and now you have to figure out a name. Uh-oh. That holds a lot of people back because it takes them a long time to figure out like the perfect name. Then when they do, they fall in love with the name and then they realize somebody else had it. So in this video, we're going to talk about naming your practice or your business so that you don't run into issues down the road. And then we'll talk about ways to make sure that the consumers, your patients or clients, can find you in the marketplace with some trademark concepts built in. And then we'll talk about how to make sure that your name is unique or unique enough that you won't run into trademark issues and that you'll also be compliant with medical board requirements in a few states as well. So, all right, the first choice you have to make is what are you gonna call it? Obviously that is the choice of the video, but you know, the first branch of the tree is, am I gonna use my name, Rattigan Functional Medicine in this case, or am I gonna use a made up name, fictitious name, sometimes called fictitious name on Secretaries of State websites or other articles that you'll see lawyers talking about this. So a fictitious name example is Premier Functional Medicine, Apex, Acme Functional Medicine, something like that, where it's kind of not your name, right? Now, keep in mind, some states' medical boards will require that you use your name and your credentials in the name of the company. If you want to use a fictitious name, you may have to register with the state medical board first to make sure that that name is clear to use for your licensure. That's not really a concern when it comes to other types of businesses, but for medical practices, you should definitely see if your state, I know California and New York are two of them, that will require you, if you're going to use a fictitious name, that you have to clear it with them first. Okay, so you don't want to use your name, or you do want to use your name. So common reasons why people do want to use their name are they have been a provider for a long time and lots of people in their community know them by name, particularly their colleagues, or they feel like they want to be like the next celebrity doctor, and that's fine as well. But there are some reasons why some common reasons why people don't want to use their name is they don't feel like they want to be on the name of the door. They don't want to be on the shingle. They are concerned that if they go to sell the practice in a decade, that it'll be harder to get buyers or to pay as much. But actually a real concern too is if your name is on the door and it's Rattigan Functional Medicine and you go to hire another doctor or mid-levels to help you, that some patients will maybe turn up their nose if it's not the person's name that's on the door. So some key considerations there to decide. Now, once you've made your decision, if you're going to use your real name, great. If it's something like John Smith, it's a little bit harder, but it can be done if it's available to you. But if it's something that's more unique, Scott Rattigan is a fairly uncommon name around the world, then you could definitely go with that and be done. If you're going to choose a fictitious name, there are a few things you should keep in mind so that you don't run into trademark issues and that you are making sure that patients can find you if they want to find you, right? So trademark issues. Trademark is a whole other video and we could spend a lot of time on it, but I want to bring in some concepts from that area of law into naming your business because it does intersect here a little bit. The first thing you should know is you don't need to register a trademark before you name your business something. It does help if you've done some preliminary searching or done a formal search with an attorney or a law firm or another business that does trademark searches. But you don't need to register the name in advance or at all, really, if it's unique enough. That's one myth. The second thing we need to talk about with naming fictitious names is that you want it to be sort of unique so that, again, people can find you. If you, in the functional medicine community, there are a lot of practices or businesses that have very, very similar names. So Flourish, Nourish, Thrive, Thrival, Primitive or Roots or Origins. There's very common names in our community. So what you want to do first is definitely, kick some names around, find one that you kind of like, and then just go to the Google machine, type it in Google and see what comes up. some of those names that I just talked about, there's 3 or 4, or in some cases 7 or 8 practices that have similar names, right? So if you're giving talks in the community and you're marketing and you're paying for advertisements and the name on the advertisement is Premier Functional Medicine, you don't want like 4 or 5 other Premier Health or Premier Wellness to kind of be in the mix with you. You want patients to be able to find you, full stop, right? That's before we talk about any kind of trademark that naming Premier Functional Medicine would have. If somebody else is already using Premier Health or Premier Wellness, then you could be in some trouble and have to change all of your branding down the road. So what do you do? Some common ideas to kind of check for when you finally have like a list of like 3 or 4 names that you can live with or that are just perfect for you. Here's what you do. You go to Google, go to Facebook, go to GoDaddy, go to all the social media sites and see if they're available. But you have to keep in mind that even if it's similar, or like I said, Premier Health, Premier Wellness, Premier Medicine, Premier Functional Medicine, Premier Alternative Medicine, those are all trademark infringing, cases that could be made for whoever had it first. So you want to make sure, again, that your name is fairly unique. How do you do that? Well, in the trademark concept world, the best ways to make sure your name is unique are to, 1, just make up a word. Famous examples of made up brand names are Xerox and Kodak. They have nothing to do with printers, or I don't know what Xerox's first business offerings were, but Kodak has nothing to do with cameras. It's not a word in English. And to my knowledge, it's not a word in any language. The next best way to kind of differentiate yourself is to use a word that has nothing to do with the services you're offering. So famous examples of that are Apple computers, or in the functional medicine world, Parsley Health parsley is an herb, but it has nothing to do with functional medicine, right? Even better, you could say something like Premier or Diploma Functional Medicine. I'm just kind of looking at things in my background. Old Glory Functional Medicine will be great. Anything that's kind of, why would you even think that these 2 things go together? Delta Airlines, Delta Faucets. So those are 2 different companies as well. So this is something to keep in mind as you're doing your search on Facebook and Google and all that. Trademark issues are industry specific. I just gave that example of Delta Airlines and Delta Faucets, 2 completely different companies, but they both have federal and I believe international trademarks as well for that name, that brand name. And it's okay, because trademarks are really only applicable to the rights that you can keep others from using your mark is industry specific, as I mentioned. And again, the whole concept comes back to confusion in the marketplace. So nobody's searching for tickets from Albuquerque to Chicago is going to end up on Delta Faucets and be like, oh yeah, where are my tickets? How do I book this flight? Similarly, if you're looking for a new bathroom vanity or something like that, and you end up on Delta Airlines website, there's no way that you're going to be confused. You're like, oh, this isn't right, so I need to type in something else, Delta Faucets, right? So as you're going through your fictitious names, make sure that you pick something that's somewhat unique for your industry. So if there's another company out there that does something completely different, you're fine to use that in most cases generally. So to recap, it's an exciting time to be naming your practice. One is, your first decision is to name it after yourself. Your next decision is to make it a fictitious name or a business name. And then make sure it's fairly unique and that it doesn't infringe on the trademark rights of anybody else. And you can't just rely on Google, Facebook, GoDaddy, and all of those, because there may be somebody who has a registered trademark already with the USPTO office or with state patent and trademark offices as well. So it'll get you most of the way there if you do those basic searches. And if you have any questions or need any help setting up your entity, once you name it, follow us at Functional Lawyer, and we'll put some resources down below for you to enjoy. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next video.